Hi guys, I'm Sam and today we are Ghana bound, and today I'm lucky enough to have Mr. Evans, practicing lawyer from AJ Law Consultants, and we are going, just like in the title, to hit this nail on the head. Why only 50 years for a lease in Ghana, no freehold, and what do you do at the end of the lease? What happens? Do I get thrown off my land and kicked into the curb? What rights do I have? Is it different for a Ghanaian citizen and a non-citizen? Today, we're going to dig a little bit deeper in this question. Thank you for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Shall we tackle this straight on?
Fantastic.
What have you got to share with us? Why only 50 years?
Now, you see, in terms of international law, every state has right to its territories. And international law defines a state to be an entity that has a well-defined territory, inhabited by, a permanent population. Therefore, from the history of international law, any land or any territory belonging to a particular state is to be enjoined by its inhabitants, the original landowners. Therefore, Ghana, at a point in time around the 60s, felt that there were, foreigners trying to take over lands that, ordinarily should have gone to the local people, the indigenous. And therefore, the law was made way back that foreigners should not be given interest in any land that will surpass 50 years. Okay. And that is done to protect, the inherent right of Ghanaians to our own land. Then also, as Africans, there is a belief that our spirituality, our roots, that we got from our ancestors, is founded purely on land ownership. Therefore, based on these two reasons, the government of the day sought to protect, interest in land, and then also to limit the extent that foreigners can have over our land. That is why they made it 50 years. And then our current constitution also gave effect to same.
It gave the same thing?
Yes. Okay. No, our current, even though the law was made way back, our current constitution gave effect to same in Article 266 of the Constitution. Okay,
so 50 years for non-Ghanaian citizens?
Non-Ghanaian 50 years. However, let me make this point clear. Now, the 50 years is in terms of leasehold. So non-Ghanaians are not entitled to freehold. Right. Now, generally, there are two interests in lands. We have the freehold interest. That is an interest that one can hold in perpetuity. Yeah. Then we have the leasehold. A lease is simply the grant of exclusive possession of a land for a duration and at a fee. Right. So with the lease, there is a duration, meaning that there is a commencement date and an ending date. Right. So the law is that a foreigner is not supposed to have the duration of a lease more than 50 years. Right. However, this law has been misinterpreted so many times. Okay. So you see, the law itself in the Constitution, in Article 266, makes a point that the foreigner should not have an interest more than 50 years at a time. At a time. At a time. Okay. So that tells you that a foreigner can even have 400 years, 200 years. However, it will be what? 50 years at a time. So therefore, for a foreigner to be able to have that long duration for leases, it depends on the kind of contract the foreigner entered into in respect of the lease. And that also depends on the kind of lawyer or the lawyer that drafted the agreement, and that's what to protect your interest as a foreigner. Okay. So the law is not that a foreigner is only entitled to one time 50 years, no. But a foreigner is entitled to 50 years of leasehold at a time or at one time. Okay. Yes.
So how do you set that up? So if we have some of our American brothers and sisters especially, they're interested in coming back, but this 50-year thing, how do they protect themselves if they're done? They want to come, they want to be able to hand it over to their children in perpetuity or whatever. How do you go about it? Is it possible? Do they need to become Ghanaian citizens to have that right? How can it be done?
It is possible. to go around the 50-year lease. Now, the first option, as I said, is that anytime a foreigner enters Ghana and they wants to acquire land or wants to acquire any property, gets in touch with a lawyer. Now, in drafting the agreement, thankfully, the Lands Act in section 50, subsection 17 and 18 allows leasehold for non-Ghanaians to be made renewable.
Okay, so that's in law.
Yes, in law.
Okay.
The lease for non-Ghanaians is allowed to be made renewable. That means that whoever is drafting the agreement, the lawyer who draft the agreement, protecting the interests of the
client,
that is the non-Ghanaian.
Right.
That lawyer must be minded to expressly provide a renewal clause. That can also be triggered as a term, and that clause can give the foreigner another 50 years.
Okay, but the terms of that renewal need to expressly be
made in the lease itself.
Okay.
So without an express provision for renewal in the lease, then when the 50 years expires, then it will be at the discretion of the landowner to either renew or not renew.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So without an express agreement for a non-Ghanaian, it's up to, so the renewal isn't assured.
Yes, the renewal is not automatic.
Right. Okay.
The renewal is not automatic. That's why you need to consult a lawyer who will seek your interest. For instance, if a lawyer knows that you are in America, you are in the States, you want to relocate to Ghana permanently, then likely you may be here for more than 50 years in terms of your descendant. Therefore, the lawyer may be minded to include a renewal clause
Yeah.
that will allow you to further get another 50 years and even more.
Okay.
So yes, the law is that yes, it is 50 years at a time, but once there is a renewal clause in the lease, it can be 50, 50, 50,
Right.
and more.
So you can do a clause that essentially gives you any agreed time, but with 50 years chunks. So if it's agreed for 400 years, is it saying do you only talk about 50 a year for the renewal, or what is it? Is the terms looked at every 50 years?
So, for instance, the parties can agree that the lease is given to the foreigner for the first term of 50 years.
Yes.
And at the option of both parties, it can be renewed for a further 50 years.
All right. So it's always 50 years at a time.
50 years at a time.
Okay.
So the first one is 50 years. Now, once there is that express renewal clause for another 50 years in the lease, then when that first 50 years expires, then that clause will be what? Triggered.
Yeah.
Then a new lease will be made for another 50 years. And that will give the foreigner 100 years.
All right.
Then in the new lease itself, for the next 50 years, you can also include what? A renewal clause for another 50 years.
But the terms of that, does it assume the terms that you've already expressed in the beginning, or does it mean that at any point at the end of the 50 years, a landowner can say, well, I want £1 million, and if you don't got it, you're kicked off?
The terms, obviously, based on the way our system works here, inflation and all those things, the terms cannot be exactly the same, especially in respect of the rent or the consideration payable. So the rent may differ, but once you own the land, the rent may not differ substantially as someone who is now coming.
Right.
Yeah. So even though the rent may differ, once you are on the land and then you are in possession, and then there's a renewal clause. That clause binds the two of you. Therefore, the landowner cannot put up any unreasonable price or consideration or rent. So that is the advantage.
All right. But without that, the landowner is free to call any price that he
without the renewal clause, then the renewal is at the discretion of the landowner. So that the landowner may decide to renew or may decide not to renew.
Okay. So if we get to that situation, I know there's a lot of hypotheticals that we're talking about. I've built a very nice house. I've passed. My children are there. There wasn't an express renewal. Is the house belonging to the landowner? Will I be compensated? How do you get around this issue?
Now, once there's no renewal clause and then the lease expires after the 50 years, then per the law, the landowner should have served you notice, or should have served your children or your descendant notice that in 2 months' time or in 3 months' time, the lease will expire, and that when it expires, they should what? Surrender possession back to him or her. So once there is no renewal clause, then once the 50 years, expires, the land or the property must revert back to the owner.
So in the case of someone buying land and building their property, the property is the leaseholder's property, no? Or does it all go back to the landowner? Because the landowner didn't put a penny into the building.
Yes. Now in Ghana and then within the common law, land has been defined to include any permanent fixtures on the land. So in law, the meaning of land is not limited to only the land itself. Of course, you can't take away a building from a land. That was done in the States back in the days where land could be moved, where they could build houses in a way that those houses could be moved. But now, as we have it currently in Ghana, all buildings on lands are permanent fixtures. And therefore, the law is that once the lease expires and then you are surrounding possession, you surround possession together the land together with any permanent fixtures on the land, including the building.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Wow. So the best thing to take from that is make sure you get a lawyer and make sure you get the express
renewable clause.
Yes. That is fantastic. I mean, it's not being any clearer. I haven't heard on any channel it being said as clear as this. If you have anything to put extra in the comments, please respectfully put your views or your understandings in the comment section, and we'd love to talk about it in there. This is a very important subject. So the last question of the day, is there any circumstances where you can buy freehold land in perpetuity and that's it? You will not have to ever renew a lease here in Ghana. Is there any way of getting that thing?
There is, but that way is for Ghanaians only.
Okay.
It's not for non-Ghanaians.